Okay, we are live on YouTube now, so everyone know. I'm really sorry for that, but there's a problem with the accounts with the Gmail because it's at
Okay,
Noah.
we are live on YouTube now,
So everyone know. I'm really sorry for that, but there's a problem with the accounts with the Gmail because it's at
okay,
Noah.
we are live on YouTube now,
So everyone know.
I'm really
And
sorry for that,
I
but
would
there's a problem with the
like
accounts.
I would like again to make a short introduction. First of all, this is the first meeting for our for work package 3, task 3.21, if I'm not wrong. And it's about the sustainable fish impact platform. And it's our first online presentation with Vangelia Dragou, who is an assistant professor at the Department of Geography at Harokopio University, and it's at the course of Environmental Physical Geography. And she will talk about the EU-funded project BioTrails. So, Vangelia, you may start your presentation now.
Yes, thank you. Let
Thank
me
you.
share my screen.
Okay.
Do you see my screen?
Of course, yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
Can we make it like on a presentation mode? Do you also see all the windows appearing on the side, or is it just me?
We see only your presentation, the PowerPoint.
Okay, great. Okay. So thank you very much for the invitation to Olga and to the Fish Impact Project. So I was asked to present the work that we have been doing within the BioTrails project. And I'm glad that I'm joining these discussions at this point in time. I have to tell you that BioTrails is a Horizon Europe project. It's a 3-year project, and actually today I'm gonna fly to Rome to have our final meeting. So the project is now concluding. It's 3 years, and with my presentation today, I'll try to give you a bit of insights of our experience over the last 3 years, how we have tried to address part of the fisheries and aquaculture supply chain within the project. And what I wanted to mention before I start is that, of course, this is not myself only, it's a collective work. BioTrails is a project with partners coming from different institutes, different backgrounds, different countries. So you see here a list of names, which are our collaborators from the Harokopio University, but also we did this in very strong collaboration with HAPO, and HAPO is also a partner within the Fish Impact Project, who helped us engage a lot with the sector, actually. So myself, I'm, like Olga correctly said, I'm an associate professor in the Harokopio University in the geography department. My background is in biology, actually, so I would identify as an interdisciplinary scientist. And within the BioTrails, what my team has done is that we try to touch a bit on the topic of the fisheries and aquaculture in Greece. And see how the supply chain can have a global impact, and how this impact is measured on biodiversity, what we can do to change this impact and to transform this for a better condition of our biodiversity. So it's a very much biodiversity-oriented approach. So the high-level aim of BioTrails is really to inspire change in the way we manage biodiversity globally. We could say that it's split in two core pillars in terms of work. The first part is to understand and map the relationship between biodiversity, climate, and society, because we understand as we move forward that we cannot view things in silos anymore. These are interdependent, so it's a nexus, and we try to map actually this nexus of interactions. And with that, we are also trying to design together with stakeholders and people interested on the different sectors that depend or impact biodiversity interventions. ways in which we want to manage things, either related to policy, either related to consumers, either related to strategies for measuring impacts, for example. But the high-level goal of that is to have a sustainable future for us, for everybody. And to do that, we have invested a lot of time and energy in engaging with stakeholders and in co-creating knowledge around the topic. So it was not just a desk study. We were out on the field. We tried to talk to people. We tried to understand what are the problems and see how we can invest energy and effort to do that better. I also want to explain that we did not just deal with aquaculture and fisheries. We also had a case study on cocoa from Peru, handicrafts, forest-based products from the Brazilian Amazon, and gold mined in Ghana. I'm not going to explain those as well, of course, but I wanted to explain that the project had a broader perspective. And one of those things that we did was related to aquaculture and fisheries, coming from Greece and supplied to the entire Mediterranean and beyond. So what we did as part of this work together with HAPO, we focused on the aquaculture firstly, and then fisheries coming supplied from Greece. And just a few facts, because I think I didn't show other participants from Greece, so that you know a bit what's going on. So practically fisheries production in the country, they come mostly from aquaculture. 65% is aquaculture and 35% is fishing. 80% of what we produce in the country is exported within Europe and other countries as well. And only 20% of what is supplied here is consumed locally. Already creating a big change in how we understand and perceive spatially the distribution of this resource. The main markets for the fish produced in Greece are mainly Mediterranean countries, Spain and France and Italy. And what is interesting maybe to know is that we mostly have marine aquaculture farms related to fish. And we have also some inland water farms and a small capacity for hatcheries, because also we import a lot of juveniles from other countries. What is maybe interesting and something that we dealt with in the project is that most of the farms are conventional. So we have only 2 farms in the country which are organic, which means that they account for a more sustainable approach into the production of the fish. And the reason for that is not so much the difficulty of being certified, but mostly the fact that it's way more costly compared to the conventional farming. And for that reason, the demand for such a product is low because it's pretty expensive. What we mostly do is that we export, as I said. So here you see just some statistics to understand a bit that we distribute a lot across the different countries. You see Italy's 36%, but Netherlands, France, Spain, but also in the US and Canada. What is also interesting is that exports are like 70% of the national supply. And within this landscape, let's say, of the supply chain, we tried really to understand that this is a sector which is very active in the country. It's a sector that actually relies on the environment for being successful. So we need an ecosystem that is in good condition for this to keep bringing, let's say, some money to the country. And on the other hand, it's a sector that also has an impact on biodiversity locally, but also elsewhere. So our main goal behind that is, first of all, to understand the complexity of the supply chain, both related to aquaculture, but also fisheries. I have to explain that fisheries was not the primary focus since the beginning, because aquaculture is much more organized as a sector. So it was more straightforward to understand and map the activities of the sector. But fisheries became stronger in our research in the second half of the project because it also had a lot of, let's say, I don't want to say conflict, but shared interests with aquaculture. So it entered the discussion from that angle. So the main goal we had was to map this supply chain and the relationships related to that, but with a high-level goal to understand how we can better design strategies within the different sectors and actions that can make it more sustainable in order to halt what we call biodiversity loss at the global extent. We didn't do this randomly. We had followed what we call the transformative change framework. This is a framework that was established by IPBES. You see the logo on the right, the bottom right of my screen. IPBES is the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform for Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. It's a global organization which was launched by the United Nations with the goal to actually try to coordinate biodiversity relevant topics in a more, let's say, centralized manner. For now, it's not a scientific effort. It's an effort which puts together scientists, experts on different sectors, industries, decision makers and governments. And to date, 152 countries, they are participating in the process and they're signing their documents, let's say, and they approve them. So practically, we followed the IPBES approach, which tried to frame what we want to do as the concept of transformative change, meaning that in order for biodiversity to be preserved, in order for sustainability to be achieved, we cannot keep doing what we're doing. We want to transform things in a more radical manner. We want to change not just our strategy, we want to change the way our system is governed. We want to change structures of who makes decisions. So these are things which do not happen incrementally, do not happen immediately. They need a lot of investment in time, and they need a lot of thinking, and they need a lot of planning ahead. But what we try to do is make the first steps towards this process. So our approach, what it had, it tried to bring together what we call the nexus of society, biodiversity, and climate, understand what are the relationships among them, and we gave a bit more emphasis to the societal bit, because we understand that no matter how much we measure biodiversity, we measure climate, if society is not able or willing to adopt a change, things will not really take place. So we had, the focus of the project was really to invest on people and the interactions in order to increase the benefits for the environment and society at the same time. So what we did within BioTrails, like I said in the beginning, I'm trying to give a brief overview. I'm not going to go into a lot of technical detail, but there is time for discussion. So if there are things which are unclear, I'm very happy to answer questions afterwards. So practically within this triangle, the nexus, that, as we call it, we have established a set of toolkits. We have a lot of modeling in order to understand people's motives and decisions. So it was a social-oriented research, but with biodiversity in its core. We have also tried to do improved methodologies for environmental footprint of different activities and impact assessment, together with climate risk analysis. And I say we because we did not do this only as Gyrocopio. We also had partners from ETH in Zurich who did the environmental footprint analysis, Draxis, which is an association which did the climate risk part. So all these, they came together under the coordination of CNR, the National Research Council of Italy, which built final models. Within our work, what we did in the societal bit, we invested energy and time on what we called understanding what the societal bit. So and we use the theory of planned behavior as a core of our approach. What it says is that someone's behavior is happening because we have an intention to act towards being biodiversity friendly, for example, or not being biodiversity friendly. And what determines our intention? 3 core factors: how we feel about it. Do I care about biodiversity? What am I supposed to do about it? It's not so much how I feel, but there is like a social expectation that, you know, eating certified fish is good for the environment. So this is not necessarily a knowledge behind, but it's a social expectation. And perceived behavior control. So practically, maybe I want to change my consumption, for example, for fish. I want to do this because they tell me it's good for the environment, but I really cannot do this because it's so expensive and I have no capacity to support that. So what limits my intention to really act towards a behavior? So this is a very old, not very old, it's from the 90s framework, but what we try to do is we try to use it and capitalize on it and try to understand how within our context this works. How can we understand what drives people's behavior and how can we change that? Where do we see leverage points for changing people's attitudes towards the consumption of biodiversity-based resources like fish? So we tested a set of hypotheses, which we designed together with the stakeholders because we wanted to have, let's say, the more realistic and feasible, but also the more utopian approaches so that they allow us to think a bit outside the box. So practically, we have, I know that this is a complex image, so I will try to explain it. Let me see, I can point stuff. So practically, we started with a question which says, what drives someone's behavioral change to act in a pro-environmental format? And how did we understand that? We have done it for all case studies, as I mentioned, including fish and aquaculture. And we did it through a set of interviews. In the beginning, we had workshops with stakeholders, 3 or 4 around the project duration, 4 in the end. And at the same time, we also conducted online surveys because we wanted to have a representative sample about what we are trying to achieve. The data we collected from those was really trying to capture 3 basic pillars of the plant behavior theory. And we had variables that we built together with data and input from the stakeholders. And we incorporated all that in a modeling process, which is called structural equation model. I'm not going to go into the technicalities of these. Modeling approach is a statistical method which tries to actually unravel causality among the variables. So is it attitude or perceived behavior control that mostly drives my intention to change my consumption pattern, for example? And with that, we try to understand what determines our behavior to become more or less sustainable. So just a little bit of detail on the process. So we have variables that which we as experts build based on our knowledge of the topic and also the literature and the stakeholder interviews. These variables were then mapped in a system and to understand what impacts which variable. And based on that, together with stakeholders, we try to understand for each variable, is it possible to change what I have now? How likely is this to change? And if this change happens, will it be very impactful? Because there are things that can change. And for example, my choice to become more aware about consuming fish that comes from aquaculture, how likely is it to happen? Maybe it's very likely, but maybe if I do this as an individual, the change that will happen will be very small. So we try to understand and map these future aspirations. And we did, like I said, from September 2023 up to September 2025, we had a round of interviews, discussions, surveys, and testing of what we're building with stakeholders. So through this process, which was like going a bit back and forth, just to show you what this looks like. So in a very, very simplified and graphical manner, what we saw, for instance, for aquaculture was that the strongest relation for someone's intention to change is related to what we call perceived behavior control. So people seem to be more eager to change their attitude and the norms of what we call aquaculture fish from aquaculture, but what they felt that was more driving, let's say, change is the control, the perceived behavior control. And it was mostly relating to these three variables that I mentioned here. So education and information. So people felt that people don't really know if fish from aquaculture is good for me to eat. Is it good for the environment? There is a lot of questioning about this, especially in Greece. And so they need more education and awareness of consumers around the topic. And at the same time, there is need for more education of people working on the aquaculture sector on what we call sustainable practices. So there is some. There are certifications about it, but people really emphasize on the fact that this is not happening often enough. So once every 3 years is no longer suitable. So something needs to be happening in a more systematic and more centralized way in order for things to be really, really sustainable. And lastly, it was about waste recycling. So people really suggested that and data as well, that waste from aquaculture sector is also something which impacts significantly the environment. So there is a need to change the approaches in order for things to really have a positive impact for biodiversity. Lastly, what people were also discussing is that there is a high need for certification schemes to become stronger, and that this will be something that will help achieve long-term sustainability in the sector. For fisheries, things were a bit different, not too much, but something that was really, really interesting is that here attitude was also highly, let's say, ranked because of two main parameters. The fact that the fisheries sector felt that there is a bit of a conflict with aquaculture because of the use of antibiotics, which are happening in the places where fisheries resources are also available. So there is a bit of an alarming issue there. And also the fact that fish population sizes are going down, fish stocks are going down. And this is completely changing people's intention to become sustainable because they need the resource as fishers to be able to survive from this job. And at the same time, it was also all the boundaries that hinder these activities, like the fact that fisheries associations in the country are not very strong, are not very well organized, and then they were really asking for something that is centrally coordinated that will help them really improve the practices of the fisheries sector, and that they would also like to have a higher frequency of trainings within the sustainable practices within the fisheries, following a bit the example from aquaculture. Also, what was very interesting here, which was not the same with aquaculture, was that within fisheries, there was a strong need and plea for the European Union to play a stronger role in shaping their practices and decisions and the use of the sea. While they were really asking for more research on the topic. They feel that research from universities and research institutes is touching the topic, but not enough for them to improve their daily life and the condition of biodiversity based on which they are really on which they really rely. So all this information was trying really to capture the part of the fisheries and aquaculture supply chain. It was not there on its own. Like I said, we had a triangle. So we had society, which is what I just described, but also climate and biodiversity. And with all the data and the work from partners, we built what we call system dynamics models which try to establish relationships between the different parameters. So eutrophication was something that was changing because of climate change in the Mediterranean, and this has implications on fish stocks, on coastal and marine vegetation, It is also impacted by waste that is coming from packaging within the aquaculture sector. So we tried really to map these relationships initially based on our own knowledge and literature, but then through workshops with experts who were really people working on fish farms and the fisheries sector. No need to panic. So this was what came out of this is the aquaculture example. It's horrendous. I don't expect you to look at it, but it's a complex system and there are lots of things happening in there. I show this to you mainly to show you that we tried really to map as much as possible the dependencies, and we selected variables for which we actually had data. So the behavioral part is somewhere in here. What came out of this was a mapping of the system, which allowed us to show this to the stakeholders in the end, not in this form. We have developed an interface and show how under different management scenarios, under different strategies, we can change the condition of biodiversity and the implication it has on human well-being. So within this mapping of this system, we could identify what we call the leverage points. We could identify the stronger dependencies, but also the places, the linkages where we can change something based on the mapping that we have developed. So within aquaculture, the core points, the core levers, as we call them, were really related to an awareness of consumers and the training of the employees in the sector, as well as the waste management, which I mentioned earlier as well. In the fisheries, again, it was about education. So this was a shared thing among the two sectors, but also the existence and development of unions and coordinations within the sector. So these were the core interventions that could help, according to the participants, to change a bit the system. Based on that, I think one of the most important achievements that we had is that we have given this information to this aquaculture and fisheries sector, and now it's really up to them to see how they can best make use of it. We are now finalizing the development of a guidance on how this information can better be used for the design of policies. But what has also happened, which I think is very important and a lesson learned also for projects which are still ongoing, is that we built a community of practice. So we developed something which we call Learning and Action Alliances. And in the bottom, you see a quote from one of our participants who was really highlighting the fact that it was the first time that they managed to sit on the same table, people from the ministry, NGOs, fishers, aquaculturers, and understand that it's not about a conflict between them, it's not about conflicting objectives, but that they all have a common goal. And what I'm happy that I found out last week is that they keep having their meetings even if our project is done, because we help build this community of practice, which was not there. And I think that's something we're proud of, I would say. So I will conclude here with our project. These are all our channels, social media, websites that you can have a look at the information. And I'm open to discuss any questions you might have about the topic or the methods that we have used.
Okay, thank you very much, Katen. Thank you very much for Valia for the exceptional presentation about biotrails. And now everyone who has a question, as Valia told us, can forward that. I don't see any hands. So Valia, everything looks perfect.
Oh, sorry. I'm looking for the app for the hand. Thank you, Professor Draco. It was really interesting lecture. My question: how difficult was to gather all the stakeholders? Like, can you share some of tips or tricks? And I mean, when you send people emails, you are reminding them. Did you have a lot of personal contacts with some of them? How difficult is, because it is very difficult to connect them in
Yeah.
the same room, you know, especially when you have and even to have people from ministry departments or national agency to come together. So and of course, if you are we are dealing with fishery and aquaculture, it's a private sector. You know, people are always working. Even just finding a time to collect them on a specific day, it's difficult. So any experience.
So I think I don't know to what extent you're doing similar things, but yes, it was not easy, I have to say. We tried to be a bit strategic in that. I mean, the biggest challenge for us was that we didn't want to have, because we wanted to do this with some frequency. So the difficult part was to be sure that every time there are the same people. And so you don't have to do it once and then you're done. You have to do it every 6 months. And of course, it's not easy to have continuity. So we have made an internal, let's say, acceptance that we want to have like 60% to be the same people within each of the meetings. But for the rest, it's okay if it's people from the same organization, but someone else is joining. So we tried really to be a bit more flexible in that. We did it differently. We try to be, creative. So one thing that was very useful is that we tried to not to invite them every time to our place, but we tried to go there. Initially, when we did the interviews together with HAPO, we really drove to each and every aquaculture farm, and we tried to talk with the people. And then when we wanted to gather them, we really used events that they would have to attend anyway. So there was a symposium of aquaculturers with the ministry. So what we did, we knew that this is going to happen. So together with HAPO, we said, let's go and ask them to spend 2 hours with us at the end of the meeting. So we really tried to use other events in which we know that they would have to attend anyway. And then we used a lot of the personal, phone calls. So we were sending emails, they were not responding. We started calling them. We started showing up in their offices. So it was a bit intensive, but the thing in our case is that we really needed to make sure that what we're producing is of some use of them. What I was surprised was that in the beginning, people were more hesitant. But as the time was passing, more people were joining because they started seeing that there is something useful for them in there. So I think the big bet was convincing people in the first meetings that what we're going to produce, they are going to use. So the most popular workshop was the last one because we had the results and they had to come and test the tools and to validate. And there people, we planned for a 3-hour workshop and it lasted for 5 hours because people didn't want to leave. So it's the first time that this is happening to me. But I have to say that this means that people felt that there is a need for that. But I think the reason for which this happened is because we invested a lot of energy in the beginning to understand the needs of the users for the models that we will build. And still, I'm not saying that our results are perfect. Even in the validation workshop, practically, if we adopt all the feedback we got, we would have to change 50% of the models. So some things are feasible, some things are not. But what we also try to do is really to manage a bit expectations. So people really insisted on delivering trainings. And we said, we don't have the expertise to be the trainers for that. So we tried to set a bit the boundaries of what we can do and what we can ask for other people to do as well. So yeah, it was not easy.
Thank you. Yeah, but a lot of valuable suggestions.
Yeah.
I heard. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it makes sense, but yeah, I think that we will definitely employ some of all of them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now,
thank you.
now I have to say Hapo's role was very central in that, because they that was their task. It was the association, so they knew the people. So that's changing a lot the process.
Yes, hi,
Yes.
Professor Dracu. Thank you very much for a very great presentation. This is going to be very important for us. There is so much overlap between this project and fish impact. I also saw on your website that you have developed an ESG biodiversity toolkit.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering, do you have any reports by now whether it was well, if it was used by the industry, by aquaculture, and what are the key points of it? What do you assess? And yeah, an experience on that, because we are kind of trying to develop something similar.
Okay.
And biodiversity is going to be very important also in our tool.
Okay. So I have to say that it was not us. So I will explain what I have understood that happened. But if you need more information, I'm very happy to put you in touch with the people who developed it. The ESG toolkit we tested with the users a few months ago. I cannot remember now if it's publicly available yet. But what we did is that, I mean, it was developed by ETH, an institute in Zurich. It was using embryo models, the Exio base, so different. It combined different types of approaches in order to best understand impacts. I think they built an interface which was quite simple. So practically, you have like I'm not sure I have access to the final one at this point, but I can share it with Olga and she can distribute it further. So because we will discuss it tomorrow. Because I think it's not launched yet. So if it's not launched, I'm not allowed to share. But I think it will be out soon because the project is finishing. The thing is that initially what we had there, for instance, was a set of 3-4 different variables which are related to impacts, like total biomass of fish, climate, sea level, sea surface temperature, different types of variables which were combined. And practically the aquaculturers, for instance, what they could do is they could insert a variable which relates to how much biomass is harvested, and then understand and see through like a process which is not visible to the external eye, the different impact on different sectors. But it was really like 4 boxes, not very sophisticated. Initially, the users were they were happy because they felt, oh, I can use it immediately. So it was quite straightforward. But the challenge was that sometimes it works like a black box and you don't know what happens underneath. So what I know that they were trying to fix was this. So have a bit more documentation about how the results are coming out. And I think this was the same issue with all the apps we have developed, that we try to use them very, let's say, not complex. And there was an issue with the transparency because people from the ministry, for example, they were saying that, yes, but I want to know, because if I'm going to use it on, a scientific, on a policy debate, I need to know where the data is coming from and all the details that run underneath. So I know that now we're setting up documentation for each user type that allows them to let's say, go into the details, but have a very light user interface. But if you're interested, I will share the links. I will take a note so that, because I have not done this myself, so I don't want to say things that are wrong.
No problem. Thank you so much. This is very, very useful.
Okay.
We will keep it in mind.
Okay.
And in your opinion, within the aquaculture industry, is there a willingness to invest in biodiversity preservation in general?
So, I mean, what we saw, I mean, and again, for this, it's always about sometimes, I mean, I don't know how much, what's happening in all the countries, but in Greece, you have the aquaculture sector, which is, let's say, it's part of, let's say, our the product that we are exporting, so it gives us, you know, some kind of interest also in Europe. The thing is that aquaculture, what usually says to us is that we depend on the condition of biodiversity. So if the environment declines, so sea surface temperature is rising. The last years it has gone up for 2 degrees, right? So this has completely messed up the production process of the sector because the reproduction rate of the fish is faster. They need more feed. They need to change the timeline of their activities. So they already have climate, which they cannot really do something about directly. And if you have eutrophication happening because of that, you have more diseases happening for the fish. So for them, any change in the environment is very harmful for the sector because it changes the quality of the product. So from that perspective, they really claim that they want to have a good condition for biodiversity. But of course, there is an understanding that there are activities in the process which have impact, a negative impact on the environment. And for that, I think this was one of the results that said that we need stricter legislation for something. Because in Greece, we also don't have, you know, a concrete maritime spatial planning. So this was also something that came up a lot on how can we use the planning in order to help, you know, somehow spatially identify areas which are reserved, and then at least the rest of the system is in a better condition. But these are all the things that, you know, that were brought up as things that we would like to happen. But feasibility of this is always depending on structures like governance mechanisms, you know.
Yes, I completely understand. And the process is very slow, so
I mean,
legislation part.
In Greece, there was, you know, 10 years ago, there was the legislation about having designated areas for aquaculture. And for now, up to now, we have 10 years later, only 2 established. And they should be 25. So
yeah, so that's the reality.
It takes time.
Yes. Thanks so much.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. So anyone else has any question for Professor Dracou? No. So I will have entered a bigger slot because I didn't know how long will take our presentation and questions. But I think we are finished with the presentation and the questions, and I would like a personal thank Evangelia for her presentation and all these details, and the details that she promised that she will send me, and I will forward to everyone. And this was the first attempt for me to make online meeting on YouTube platform, so fingers crossed. Okay, at least we managed it, yeah? And I would like everyone to thanks that attend our third meeting, and our coordination, Mirella, for forward to everyone and try to have more persons to attend our first opportunity online, and hope for the next one will be as good as this one. So thank you very much. Have a nice day. Bye-bye for me.
Thank you,
you,
yeah.
Olga.
Thank you
And
very
thank,
much.
thank you
Professor
once again,
Dracu.
Professor
Thank you,
Dracu. It
bye.
was really great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much.
presentation. Thank you.
We'll be in contact.
Definitely.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.